generous, very generous. And the foundation has an annual meeting coming up.
We do. We do. It will be held May 14th from 4 to 6 at the Clay Center for the Arts and Sciences, and it is open to the public. We started this, what we call the annual report to the community meeting, about, maybe 13 years ago. We felt like because we are a community foundation, as I mentioned before, and we represent the community both from the donors' perspective, people who have contributed in this community to sustain the work of the nonprofit community here, and we also, of course, give it back to people in the valley who are providing services from a gamut of arts and culture and education and health and human services and land use and recreation across all those fields of interest. So it's very much community oriented, and we felt like we weren't talking to the community. This is sort of like, these are the stockholders, if you will, in the foundation, and we report to them, bring them together. We have a business meeting and then a little bit of reception, and actually report to our stockholders once a year.
And again, who is invited to this meeting?
The public, anybody. We have invited our donors and government officials, nonprofits, community leaders, but it's open to the entire public because the community foundation serves all the residents of the greater Kanawha Valley.
And this year there's a special program for the annual report, is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're really pleased. The focus of the program is on developing and creating community wealth so that we're able to generate wealth within our community and that it stays here, that it sticks, that it stays local. And we're pleased to have Wayne Fabish from the Ford Foundation, who is a program officer there, who will be a speaker, as well as David Ramsey, who is the CEO of the Charleston Area Medical Center. He will be here, be at the annual meeting. Of course, he lives here, but he will be at the annual meeting. And they're going to talk a little bit about, Wayne will talk a little bit about wealth creation in and of itself, which I hope we'll get a chance to in a minute. And also, Dave Ramsey will talk about the CAMC's role in creating local wealth. So we're really excited, one, to have Wayne here, and two, to have David be able to talk a little bit about a national project, a lead in the nation that CAMC is working on. So.
Oh, this is very exciting.
Yeah.
So you talked about wealth creation, and are there certain types of wealth creation?
Yes, yes. It focuses on 7 different types. Normally when we think of wealth, we think of money. But for a community to be wealthy and to prosper, there are various types of wealth that it needs. So there are actually 7 different forms of wealth.
Okay, could we go over those 7 forms?
Oh,
could you explain them to me?
Absolutely. Well, I can try.
Okay, let's do it.
One of the forms of wealth is individual wealth. Another is intellectual. Another is social, natural, built, political, and financial. So those are the basic 7 forms of wealth or capital that a community needs to be prosperous, for the quality of life to be good for the residents who live there.
And there is a way to measure these to judge the outcome.
Yes, yes. In fact, if you look at individual wealth, what we're talking about are skills, people's health. These are things that enhance an individual's ability to be the best that they can be. Literacy, technical skills, these are the things that allow us to have a job, to again, rise to whatever level of competency we're able to do. So in order for a community to thrive, you have to have people who are able to do that.
Right.
The intellectual wealth is actually what it sounds like. It's knowledge and innovation and creativity. Again, for a community to thrive, you're going to have people who are always thinking about the future, always thinking about new ways of doing things. Research and development would be an example of intellectual wealth. New technologies, all of these kinds of state-of-the-art, new ways to do things, new businesses, new industry. All of that is considered intellectual wealth. Social wealth, which is something that the foundation has been involved in for quite some time, since about 2000, deals with creating trust and relationships among people. Because, I can be as well prepared to be the person I'm going to be with intellectual wealth, or individual wealth. I can talk with you, and together we can come up with some really innovative intellectual things that we could do.
Right.
But if we can't trust each other, and after we've sat down and talked about them and know what we want to do, if we can't trust each other to do that and to know that we're going to go off and do what we say we're going to do, then nothing will happen. So social capital is sort of the thing that holds, it's the glue that holds things together in a community, so people can sit down and think about things and work through problems and talk about those kinds of problems. So it's, I tell you, a great example of social wealth is Festival here in Charleston. When we do that in the summer, because it brings together people, there are two types of social capital, bridging and bonding.
Okay.
Bonding's, you and I are very similar. We're females. We have the same background, so we're going to bond much easier, and our level of trust will be easier. However, if it's somebody that is from a different background, maybe didn't grow up here, is of another race or ethnicity or another socioeconomic level, of course, we work in the same business, so again, it's going to be easy for us. But it's that bridging social capital that really makes a community strong. So at Festival, you get everybody out on the streets, talking to each other, sharing common interests, listening to music, going to events.
Right.
My personal favorites, buying the stuff, like the jewelry and the pottery and things like that. But so it kind of bridges everybody in the area together, and it's an excellent example of that social capital.
So it would be the example of the accountant and the CEO standing right next to the guitar player and the pottery maker, all sharing a similar experience.
Exactly. That's exactly, and that's what makes it strong. So that when there is crisis, we can stick together, and when there isn't, we can use all of those levels, because there are several levels of creativity you just mentioned for all of those professions. So they can use all of their creativity, their innovation, their intellectual capital, their individual capital, combine it, and we can move the community forward.
That's when great things happen.
Yeah. The other types, that was 3, and those are the 3 sort of basic types of wealth, that if you don't have those 3, then the rest of the other ones, these other 4, are not, they're going to be harder to do. And one of them is natural capital, and it is just what it sounds like, natural resources, land, water, air, using them, protecting them to the best of our ability so that they'll be here for generations to come, so that we don't sort of soil the opportunity to use our natural resources in the future. Built environment, infrastructure, houses, buildings, roads, water, sewer, all of those things that you might need, including broadband in this day and age.
Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've got to have that in order to do business in many ways now. Political capital is another one, and it's not what it sounds like. It doesn't mean, although we're very good at this, we in West Virginia, of knowing our political leaders and being able to speak to them.
Right.
It's more than that. It's being able to know the decision makers in any arena. For example, a parent who has a child in school, the decision makers, the teachers, the principal, the school board, they're decision makers. That parent needs access to those decision makers to influence how the child is going to be
Absolutely.
educated. So it's not just the political that we normally think of, lobbying Congress or the legislature or talking to the mayor about and city council about what rules and regs we want. No, it's more than that. It's about knowing who affects our lives in and outside ways, and having access to them so that we can have some input and knowledge about them. And then of course the last one is financial. And by that, again, I don't mean just your current paycheck. I mean assets in the community that stay in the community, like a community foundation. We're a perfect example. Here's this $190 million
Right.
sitting in this community, available for this community to help sustain it through good times and bad. So it's assets that stay in the community, financial assets that stay in the community, that are there for the betterment, to improve the quality of life.
I think we've been able to put on the screen the graphics explaining the different types of wealth. So hopefully that gives everybody a very clear picture of what you've just said.
Great.
Why don't you tell me how the foundation is using these 7 forms of wealth?
Well, I'm pleased to say that we are using these forms of wealth to measure our grant making program. We do have a competitive grant process where nonprofits can apply to us, and then we have a committee that reviews those applications or those, grant applications, and decides whether or not they should be funded, and if so, how much they should be funded. And we're using the 7 forms of wealth to look at whether or not the grantees are producing them and how they're producing them, how much they're producing them, in what areas. Now, not everybody will be producing all 7 forms. It's
and you
impossible.
wouldn't want them to.
No,
Right.
no. And we're not asking the nonprofits to totally change what they do. We're starting to actually be more aware. They've always created one or more of these 7 forms of wealth, but it's never been uppermost in their mind nor in our minds. So if we're going to strengthen the community, the foundation wants to look at what are the forms of wealth that our grants produce. So that if we give money to a particular agency or a nonprofit, what type of wealth will that create? And then at the end of the year, we'll be able to see where we have created wealth and where maybe we need to. Maybe nobody is. Maybe there's a hole there, a gap that needs to be filled. Or maybe the foundation feels like, well, maybe that's really not our role to produce natural wealth or natural capital. Maybe there's maybe that's somebody else's role. It's not ours. Maybe we stick to the top 3, intellectual, individual, and social. So, it has changed the grant process some. The grantees are now not only telling us about their project, they are also telling us about how they see their particular work creating wealth, additional wealth in their communities.
And so I think we touched on this, but this is a new process for the
Yes.
foundation. This is new grants. And there was some training involved for the nonprofits, so this did not come as a surprise.
Right.
So they are ready for it. It's very exciting.
Right.
So tell me, the changes have happened, they're in the process. What prompted them? How did it all come about?
Well, the Ford Foundation, whom I mentioned earlier, Wayne, who will be with us at the annual meeting.
One of the guest speakers.
Yes, he and his team at the Ford Foundation created this sort of model or framework that we're talking about in terms of local wealth or community wealth creation. And having learned of that and learned about the opportunities, the foundation had been looking. Our board, I guess in December of 2011, approved a comprehensive investment plan.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, yes, we do invest the money. The $190 million is invested, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about the investment in the community, our grant making. And our board adopted this plan, and it was really a plan, so there was no implementation piece to it per se. But it said that we wanted to make an impact, that it needed to be measurable, and it needed to be something that benefited the community, the foundation, and the nonprofits. We didn't want to create something that was more egregious. They already had their hands full providing the services to the community that they do. So we didn't want to make it more complicated. So this community investment plan was out there. With the board had adopted it, we knew that was the framework we wanted to work in.
Right.
And then we learned about the 7 forms of wealth and thought, oh my gosh, there are measurable, as you mentioned. We can evaluate them. This is perfect. This is the way to implement this plan.
Yes.
So the board adopted the 7 forms of wealth as their implementation process.
Okay.
And it is kind of a mind shift from a grant making to an investment in the community, opposed to just giving the gift. This is actually making an investment and expecting a return, one of the forms of wealth. Before, when we gave the grant, it was, we hope you do a great job and hope this helps you do your work.
Right.
Now, we hope that does all that too. It helps you do your job and makes it easier for you, and you're better able to serve your clients. At the same time, it's an investment for us, so we would like a return on that investment of one or more of these 7 forms of wealth. And
again, just to reiterate what you said, we're asking the grantees to provide information, but we're not really asking them to provide new services with this new process.
Oh, correct. Not at all. That's their business, not at
Right.
all our
Right.
business. In fact, basically what we've done is ask them to provide us with one of the 7 forms. We've also asked them 3 questions. And the questions are, how much do you do? In other ways, what are the numbers? How many people are you going to serve? How much money are you going to raise, or do you need to raise? The number of events you may have. Just basic, how much do we do? The second question is, how well do we do? How good were we at providing this service? Were we, did we survey our clients? Did we look at how people received the service we provided?